This video is going to be an introduction to demand. So from the reading, we know that demand is defined as the willingness and ability to purchase goods and services at a given set of prices, ceteris paribus. So let's take a look at that and see what that means to us. So let's assume that we are looking at possibly buying a cup of coffee. Okay, we are doing a road trip and we want to be able to stay awake and we want to have some coffee for our road trip. So let's say that we go ahead and we drive up to the cafe and we see that there are a couple of various prices that we are going to look at. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with what's called a demand schedule. So if I drive up to the cafe and I see that the price of coffee is $5, what is the quantity that I'm going to purchase? This is called the quantity demanded. Well, actually, for water and beans, my quantity demanded is going to be 0. I'm not going to buy coffee for $5. However, I'm on a road trip, and if they priced it at $4, I would buy my first cup of coffee. I happen to like coffee. If they priced it at $2, I would be purchasing 2 cups of coffee. If I drove up and saw that coffee was only $1 a cup, I would probably get 3 cups of coffee. Okay. Now, I'm going to use this to create my demand curve. I'm going to take this information and transfer it over to a graph to represent this data. But what if coffee was free? How many cups of coffee would I purchase if coffee was free? Well, I happen to like coffee. I'm on a road trip, so we're going to say that I have 4 cup holders in my car plus my lap and my non-driving hand. So let's say that I am going to purchase 6 cups of coffee, which is a little bit extreme, I know, but I'm not going to purchase beyond 6 cups of coffee because 1, I'm out of room. 2, the opportunity cost of that coffee, I'm not going to be enjoying that coffee as much as I was earlier. I'm going to be kind of coffeeed out. So we know that even if it's technically free, in monetary sense, it's not free in the economic sense. So we know that there's an opportunity cost to having coffee. Maybe it is that I can't have tea. Maybe it is that my teeth are going to be very acidic after that much coffee, and my stomach is probably also going to be very acidic. So let's just take this information and create what's called a demand curve. So let's start off by graphing it. In economics, when we graph, and I know a lot of science people have a problem with this and mathematic people, we are going to put price on the y-axis. So this right here is our y-axis. The y-axis is our downward sloping, the y-axis is our vertical axes, and the x-axis is the horizontal axis. So now we're going to create our demand curve, and we'll see that it is a downward sloping curve. The way that we're going to create it is we're going to just plot the points that we have. So at $4, I'm going to have 1 cup of coffee. $2, I'm going to have 2 cups of coffee. At $1, I'm going to have 3 cups of coffee. And if it is free, down here at $0, I'm going to have 6 cups of coffee. So if we link those curves, we'll come up with our demand schedule. Okay, so this is, if we link those curves, we'll come up with our demand curve. So this is demand. This is my demand for coffee. Okay, now if we were to go to the market demand, we would take my demand, your demand, all sorts of other people's demands and add them together to figure out what the market demand for coffee is. But from this individual demand for coffee, we can learn a lot of things about the demand curve. 1, it's a downward sloping curve. There are definitely times that we violate this rule, but 95% of the time there's something called the law of demand, which proves that the demand curve should be downward sloping. And the law of demand is very simple. It says that if we see there's an increase in price, it's going to lead to a reduction in the quantity demanded. Let's see, is this true? If the price moves from $4 up to $5, what's happening to my quantity demand? Well, I'm leaving 1 unit behind and moving towards 0 units, okay? So that means that there's definitely an inverse relationship between price as it's going down and quantity demanded, it is going up, okay? So that means that if we were to move along our curve, we would be following the law of demand. As price falls, quantity demanded increases. The opposite is also true. If price were to if price were to decrease, I would increase my quantity demanded. Okay, nothing has made me like coffee more. The only reason I'm buying an additional cup is because it is at a reduced price. Because the price is lower, I am buying an additional cup of coffee. So this represents a movement along the curve, which is extremely different than what happens when we shift the curve, okay? So this just simply means that we are moving along our existing demand curve from one point to another, okay? Movements along the curve are very different than shifts of the curve. And next we're going to look at what happens when we have shifts of our entire demand curve.